Welcome, everybody, to the Channel Vision Magazine webinar featuring Quest Technology Management in Part 4 of its 6-part sales bootcamp. In this presentation, we will learn how to demystify application development and system integration projects. I'm your moderator, Bruce Christian, Senior Editor of Channel Vision Magazine. Your host is Quest Technology Management Vice President of Sales and Partnerships, Adam Burke. And with that, let me turn it over to Adam Burke.
Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's time today and this morning. Thanks for joining us on this fourth iteration of our bootcamp series. We are going through all the different service pillars of Quest Technology Management and helping our partners, consultants, and trusted advisors out in the industry capture more revenue and get a little bit more involved in your partners and your clients' businesses. So today, we're going to be talking about application development and integration. If there's any previous events or webinars you'd like to take a look at, we've done system integration projects and complex multi-building block sales, infrastructure services, and cybersecurity. So we have those. We'll give you a little more information on how to reach those at the end of today's presentation, but check those out in our partner program and portal as well. That's some good content there, and appreciate the feedback. Again, like Bruce was saying, any questions, comments, anything you want us to kind of jump into deeper as we go along here, happy to do it. I want to preface this with, I am by no means an expert in application development or integration. I've been a part of Quest team going on 15 years now, and a lot of what we've done and a lot of what we've built. And we have a fantastic and amazing team that supports our sales and our partner team and our channel. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about how we got into application development and how we got involved in system integration projects, and how you can, as a partner, as you're growing your business as well. So today, we're going to be covering a little bit about the landscape, just some basic terminology. What is application development? What are some common terms used? What are some common challenges? We're going to be going into how you can initiate that conversation, how you can start the dialogue with your customer, how you can understand a little bit more about what they're doing in their landscape today. And then we started our program from an application development standpoint a little over 13 years ago. And we traditionally stick with the Agile methodology. So I want to talk a little bit, those are some terms around Agile, waterfall, and some development practices. We're going to go into those as well. Hopefully, as you walk out of here today, you're going to know a little bit more about what your customers are dealing with. You're going to know a little bit about a value prop to position as how you can help, leveraging your partnership with Quest. And then, why is application a differentiating service? Why do you care? Why do your customers care? And how can you help there? So really excited about it. We're going to get into some terms, going to get into some high level stuff. Again, if there's any questions, any comments or concerns or anything you want to kind of bring up, we're going to be doing a Q&A at the end, and looking forward to anything you might be curious about. So why application development? Applications are everywhere. If you listen to folks out there, there's certain concepts around software is going to eat the world and software is going to take over everything. Right now, where we are in the market, I was just at CV Expo a little over a week ago, and talking about SaaS applications and the prolific nature of subscriptions and what people have invested in. So as you're understanding why people care about application development, they've spent a lot of money in this space. They've purchased a lot of different components. They've purchased a lot of different services. And through application development, you can help them do a couple different things. You can increase their efficiency around what they have today, right? You can help them get the most out of their current investment. Every business out there, I don't care if it's healthcare, manufacturing, retail, whatever the business is, government sector, they're looking for a competitive edge. Everyone's looking about how to get the most out of their technology stack to seamlessly interact with their clients, understand more about what their clients are looking for, and then execute that transaction quickly. So every facet of a business engagement is leveraging some sort of software. And when we come in there, and when you have an opportunity to talk to your customers, you can help them with that competitive edge. So application development is going to give you the ability to help them improve their business. I don't know if it was 2012, 2013, on the cover of Forbes magazine, It was, you had the Google, Amazons, and Microsofts and their giant oil rigs, and they were talking about how data is the new oil, right? It's the new gold for revenue and for generating the ability to scale services. So data accessibility, privacy rights to your data, being able to access what data clients already have built out. Organizations have had applications developed and been running their business on applications for years. Legacy ERP systems, legacy CRM systems, every client transaction, every interaction over the last 10, 20, 30 years is in a database somewhere. There's an arms race right now trying to figure out how to get access to that data and use it as effectively as possible to move the ball forward for an organization. So you hear everyone says AI. I made it 8 minutes into this webinar before saying AI, I apologize. But everyone's talking about AI and large language models. I was at a Microsoft event last week talking a little bit about and learning a little bit more about their Copilot and things like that. Data is critical to having those AI and those large language models even be usable. They have to have access to data. And so how these applications are tying into existing databases is critical. So all these types of things are great reasons why clients are trying to get more out of their applications. It's going to help them scale, right? So it's going to help them do more with what data they have, reach more clients effectively. Security is always a feature that people need to make sure they're worried about, right? What data are you trusting? What applications are you trusting with your data? How are you setting those connections? We're going to talk a little bit about that. Compliance is getting pushed down from the big guys to the service providers. Everyone's having to deal with different types of compliance needs. It could be, things from, ITAR compliance, SOC type 2. If you do any type of credit card transactions, you're going to have to deal with those types of compliance issues where the transaction actually takes place. You can help organizations map out their software landscape. What are they using? Where are they using it? And how are those things interacting? All of that is ultimately going to go back to their policies and their compliance. But applications at the top of the stack, last week we talked infrastructure, bottom of the stack, right? Layer 1, physical infrastructure. We're now at the top of the stack, but all those things have to work together, and it all goes back to compliance, all goes back to policies. That we live in a organization that's based on laws and regulations, so that all has to matter, and that matters at the application layer. So there's a ton of reasons why. There's about 10 of them here. We've gone through a few of them, but there's a big driver for organizations trying to get the most out of their applications. Another reason why, maybe a little cynical, but real, is a lot of the trusted advisor community, a lot of the people that we work with, Quest came from the VAR space. We helped organizations buy, purchase, procure software and hardware, but it was more of a build, operate, and transfer. We'd hand over the network infrastructure. We would hand over the software subscription licensing. We would act as a transaction. We still do a lot of that, still do a lot of our services. And that's where we came from 40 years ago. But if you look at Gartner expectations around spending, one of the reasons it's probably a good idea, stomping my foot kind of hard here, probably a good idea is because the entire industry that all of us are very, very familiar with, I don't care if you're part of, whatever partner network you're a part of, if you sell Cisco, if you sell Microsoft, if you sell, legacy hardware or network infrastructure or carrier circuits or whatever you sell, traditional sales in that network connectivity and spending space, $260 billion for 2023. That's a big number. It's a great number. It's a fantastic number. Love that number. Projected spending for enterprise software, just enterprise software alone, $856 billion. Okay, so the money is growing significantly in the enterprise space. You're seeing it ramp. You got a hockey stick action going here into 2023. And this is, most of us built our enterprises and our companies on this portion of the pie. If you move into the application development space, if you move into integration space, there is a significantly larger amount of spend going on for every single one of your customers in enterprise software and helping those systems operate, function, communicate in a secure and reliable way. You can't negate the infrastructure. You can't negate the underlying network components. You can't forget any of that. But the enterprise software space, huge opportunity, and it's only growing, right? It's a massive, massive opportunity, and what we're seeing just in spending in the US alone. Now, two different methodologies that you have, right? Two different areas where you can get engaged, and you'll hear some of these terms. We built out our program on the Agile methodology, right? Agile development gives organizations the ability to have an iterative process, right? You're looking at the requirements, you're planning, you're designing, you're developing, you release, you track it, and then you start the process right over and over all again, okay? It uses a lot of different methodologies into one system at one team, right? So you have these Scrum teams, right? And you have Scrum masters, and you go through these different sessions, and it's a very collaborative process. It's an iterative process over and over again, constantly. You go through different sprints, different design exercises, and it's a continuous engagement. It's not a start at point A and you end at point B. You're constantly kind of improving, adjusting, getting feedback, and rolling with it. So Agile process is a methodology that we leverage typically in our engagements. So if you ever are working with a Quest person and you kind of come in and you say, hey, this is what we'd like to do, we're going to start with what we call the Agile process. Now, the waterfall process has been around a really long time. It's more of a larger, unchanging type of a project. So if you know specifically the design you're looking for and the specific action that's going to happen at the end of what you're trying to build, this is a good waterfall methodology. Starts at the top. You start with your requirements, right? You work with the different business units. You understand what they're trying to do. Then you bring in the architects, right? The guys who do all the folks who do all the logical design work, right? We start here. This data is going to interact with this platform, with this user, and it's going to do X, Y, and Z. Then you're going to implement, you're going to test, and then you're going to maintain it, right? So this is large system development. You know exactly what you're building. You know exactly what the end users want to do, and there's not a lot of flexibility. Once you kind of decide on the design, that waterfall, you're kind of over the edge of that waterfall. You're going for it at that point. Agile doesn't have that strict of a framework, and it's constantly changing. We adopted and what we run as the Agile process for our development exercises because there's so many different connection points within an organization, and it's always changing. Someone's always buying a new application. Someone's always subscribing to a new service. Microsoft is always releasing a new update. It's always changing, right? So we found that the Agile process is very successful for the types of engagements that we get involved in. But we know there are folks out there who exercise and execute in this long-term design process, and where we plug in to the waterfall engagements can be around the M&O, so the maintenance and operation of that application, or different levels from a staffing standpoint. We haven't talked about professional services in these boot camps yet, but there are people that get plugged into all of these different sections here. Design has architects, implementation has system administrators and network folks, verification has QA testers and people like that. So there's an opportunity, regardless of the methodology, if we're running the project, right, and you're running an Agile Scrum sprint session, or if a client's running their own waterfall design effort and they need people to help in these different phases, you can plug in architects. You can help source QA testers and developers, or people to help maintain, patch, and operate the system. So these are some of the different methodologies people will jump on when they're building out different programs. They can run these in-house, or they can run them as third parties. Quest is a third party, obviously, that can act as an extension and help operate these different development practices. Some additional basic terms that are good to know. COTS application, that's a common one, right? It's a commercially available off-the-shelf application. That basically means this is a defined set of tools, and you're going to buy this application and you're going to run it in-house, and it's going to help you do X, Y, and Z. Good example of that would be like anyone who's worked with credit unions or banks. Everyone's got a core banking application in Fiserv or Jack Henry or whatever. That's an example of a COTS application. It's commercially available. You got to buy the package and you decide which software application you're going to run your business on. Another good example of that would be like an Oracle NetSuite platform or a SAP platform or Microsoft Dynamics. Those are defined assets and those are defined software packages you're going to buy and operate in your environment. SaaS applications, everyone uses it, everyone knows it, whether you know it or not. Microsoft 365 is a SaaS application. All the Google suite of services are examples of SaaS applications. These are applications that are hosted, managed, and reside in the cloud, and your users are accessing them through some type of authentication, and the infrastructure is up, it's running, it is what it is. In-house development, just as an example, obviously Uber's got some awesome developers and some amazing capabilities. They developed their application in-house, and they took that application as a business unit and took it out to the market to do on-demand transportation services, right? They developed that, they built it. That's an in-house development application that's basically leveraging what their intellectual property is. A lot of application conversations are going to start at the database level. So how are they categorizing their data? Are they using Microsoft SQL? Are they using MySQL? Are they using Postgres? What database are they using? And just how, when you're talking about their database, it's basically how are they categorizing their data? How are they managing it? When they have thousands of users or 500 users, how are they representing those users in their database? How are they representing those assets, those units, whatever measure they're having? How is that data being stored? Then your operating systems, is it a Microsoft, is it Android, is it iOS, is it Linux? What's the operating system that is helping to translate that data into some type of a performable asset that you can translate into something usable, right? What's it built on? Is it built on Microsoft? Is it built on Android? Is it built on iOS? Is it Linux? What's that operating system that it's built on? As you get a little bit further involved in the conversation, you hear things like legacy COBOL systems, right? They have, legacy COBOL coded systems that are old school machine language translation to C#, C++, Java, tons of different application languages out there, basically lots of different resources. When you go back to this Agile development, you need to have people who understand all of these different facets in this development process, right? So as you're going through that, every single one of these decisions affects the decision above it, right? So what your coding language is matters, what your operating system is matters, and then ultimately what your development methodology matters, right? Are you going to have a linear process where you start here at point A and end up at point B, and you're going through the waterfall, and you make that design decision and you're jumping off that waterfall and you're landing at the bottom and hopefully you float? That's kind of the linear version. And then there's the iterative version where it's agile. We got a team of collaborative engineers working together of different skill sets. We got a database person, DBA. We have a system admin who's really squared away in .NET or Microsoft. And then, hey, what application are we writing this on? What's the user interface ultimately going to look like? Got that whole team together, working together in an agile process. So a lot of fun, very, very involved in your partner and your customer's business when you get the opportunity to have these conversations and peel back the onion a little bit about, hey, what's your business built on? Because at the end of the day, these basic terms, you don't have to be an expert in COBOL. You don't have to be an expert in Android OS requirements or Microsoft, but you do need to know some about the basic building blocks to have that conversation and ask if they need help with that. And that kind of gets us right to, how do we engage? Now, for those of you who have, been riding along for the business boot camp, you're going to see some similarities here. There's a saying that if you if you know the way, you see it in all things. And this is a very similar methodology to how we engage in other pillars of service within Quest. So you have the right as a partner at the table to get curious about what that organization is up to, right? How are they doing? How are they managing their applications today? Who's responsible for it? Is it in-house? Do they outsource everything to Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Dynamics? And hey, that's great. Or do they build in-house applications? Is it a hybrid, right? Do they have in-house developers? Are they using an in-house team, or do they outsource that, to nearshore resources or offshore resources to do that, and then have some local management there as well? One of the things, like I mentioned, was at the CV Expo, a couple of weeks back, and application rationalization projects are becoming more and more common when people are trying to. I was sitting on a board with a gentleman on a panel discussion talking about the proliferation of SaaS applications and how many of those applications have overlapping capabilities within the same enterprise, right? So you're basically oversubscribing. A lot of organizations are oversubscribing and underutilizing what they've already purchased. So, just, hey, have you gone through an application rationalization project? It's for those of us who've been in telecom or have worked in telecommunications and the carrier world for a while. Think of SaaS application rationalization projects like telecom expense, like the first phase of a telecom expense management engagement. Hey, we're going to do some screen tests. We're going to go through your bills. We're going to look at some things. You're doing that digitally. You're going through and you're going to look at what do they have in place today, what do they actually need, and what are they paying for, right? So you go through and you look at those applications that they have deployed. What do they think they're getting out of them? What are they actually using them for? And then helping them rationalize the spend. Same practice, again, you know the way, you see it in all things. Like the same practice is helping someone assess how many circuits do you actually need? How many phone lines do you actually need? Are you using this? Is it just a legacy system that's been there and everyone's been afraid to turn it off because they don't know what it actually is tied to? So ask the questions. It's the same concept. It's just as opposed to, their legacy phones. It's their applications that host their business. It's the same concepts. And then, asking the question around Agile development, iterative processes, helping them, do an assessment of their environment to start. We're going to go through an example later. One of the best ways to start, a lot of people don't have this skill set in-house, especially in the middle market. DBAs, right? So database administrators, people who can help manage and operate a database effectively, high demand process. If you have someone who's really good at MySQL, SQL, Postgres, or even in COBOL, we've done some application modernization projects around a lot of different databases. Helping people start with the database layer is one of the biggest challenges. Was at a Microsoft event, and they have a new AI program. Everyone's talking about Copilot, right? It's gonna, you listen to Satya Nadella for a while. It's gonna change the world. Could be. But right now, Microsoft is directly engaged with 9 major enterprises. They talked about this on the main stage. 9 major enterprises, helping them to classify their data so it's a usable format for the Copilot capabilities of Microsoft. And Copilot is their version of their work along AI component for their large language model. So the data classification is extremely important. And you're going to hear more and more people as you're chatting with folks around how they're classifying their data. It used to be critical to classify your data, still is, based on, okay, what's the risk of this data? This is healthcare data, or this is personally identifiable information, or these are security numbers, these are credit cards. That was critical to understand what that data was, because you had things like data loss prevention and you're trying to secure it. Now, one of the things that I thought was really, really interesting, hearing about what Microsoft was talking about at their recent large convention, was the idea they have 9. They've picked basically the top 9 companies that they work with. They didn't name the companies, but large enterprises that they're helping to classify the data. We all know large manufacturers, the Microsofts, the Googles, the Amazons of the world. They don't have services organizations that are going to go into the lower enterprise or middle market. They basically picked the big 9 that they're going to standardize on, but the rest of the market is open for helping to classify data to get the most out of the next phase of what's going to happen around people leveraging that data. So great thing to do, good entry point. Start talking to people about how they're classifying their data. How are they managing their databases today? Do they need any help with that? Are they seeing any issues? Great starting point. We'll go through an example a little bit later around how you can get the most out of that. These are, again, very similar to the rest of our pillars, but the path is always the same. there needs to be some type of a need or pain point. We're seeing a lot of pain points around database assessment, but application API, security reviews is also another one, because basically, what an API is a contract between applications. It stands for Application Programming Interface, right? So it's a contract between two applications that says, if I do X, you're going to do Y. So we all have a good example of this is you have your weather app on your phone, right? There's an API when you open up your weather app and say, hey, I'm in Sacramento, California. What's the temperature today? That application on your phone has an API connection to another database that's communicating when you open that and you want to know what the temperature of the weather is going to be like. It's pulling that from another database, a national database, probably on the weather instance for that area. So it's pulling down data. When you see that application, that plugin between your phone, the application on your phone, and the actual data, that's configured. And there's security ramifications when organizations plug their applications into other people's data sets. That's a potential vulnerability. We talked about it in cybersecurity. Every time you increase convenience, you also potentially open yourself up for threat. It's just the nature of things. Every time you add another API and another plugin and connect your data to an application you're trying to leverage to get the most out of your data, there's a potential vulnerability for a bad actor to put some bad code in there, some malware, some visibility software that can basically cause you a bad day. So we're helping people with API security code reviews. It's just code. It's just language basically saying, if I enter X, you're going to provide Y. It's a contract between two computers that are basically speaking with each other. So great opportunity for folks if you need help with API security review. Got great developers in there. That's also an area we can just plug into the Agile methodology, helping folks with if they have an Agile team, they're running their own scrums, they're running their own sprint sessions, they can run that code through Quest or through a third party to do a security review. That's also an opportunity. People sometimes like to have third parties take a look at those services. The last one is, a sprint zero. When we're working together with folks, we've talked a little bit about Agile methodology earlier. You're going through all these different sprints, all these different sessions here when you're going through the process. A sprint zero is really helping an organization assess and evaluate what they have in place today and document where they want to go and give them an initial outline as far as the level of effort that's going to take for those initial phases, right? So you can't start an app dev project, a design project, a modernization project, a migration project. You can't start any of those engagements from an app dev standpoint without knowing what you have today. So Sprint Zero is a great opportunity to basically help organizations decide how they're going to upgrade, how they're going to modernize, gives them a good snapshot of where they are today and the level of effort it's going to take them, to get to a modernized application in the future. So we always like to record these sessions and we always like to send them out, but there are some main reasons around, hey, why get into it? We talked about the massive increase in enterprise licensing spend over the years, almost $800+ billion in people spending just on enterprise software. That's just on the acquisition of the software, right? People need help tuning, maintaining, and integrating all these different platforms. So it could be an Oracle. Oracle could need to be migrating your Salesforce instances to another provider. You could need to be tying those platforms together. You could need to be basically getting the most out of on-premise databases and getting those ready to modernize and move to the cloud. Everyone talks about cloud mobility and hybrid environments, but we've talked about a few times data being the new oil. Data is very, very important. Who owns that data, where that data resides, very, very critical. And as you get in these conversations, this splinters off into a lot of different areas because applications touch every aspect of the business. It's going to touch their business continuity planning. It's going to touch their cybersecurity initiatives. The data has to be protected. The users have to be protected. The connectivity to get the users to the data has to be secured and provided and reliable. So the awesome part about application development is it's going to touch every aspect of the business, and it's very, very sticky. Once you get involved in that layer of an organization, you become part of that business. So it's a huge upside. There's a huge pain point for this right now, especially in the middle market. There's not a lot of people that are effectively, efficiently, and consistently delivering an application space. You see a lot of people spin up and then spin down. The big four have this baked out. They know how to go after Pepsi and Coca-Cola and Home Depot and roll out those application, modernization and those what's the term that they use? Digital transformation, right? Love that term. Good marketing term. Those efforts, right? So they take those large projects, but every customer that you have is trying to deal with this. They're all trying to deal with the ability to get the most out of what they've invested in. And it takes them basically to the next phase of their business. It's going to help them get more out of what they have. And for you, it's additional profit, it's additional revenue, and it gives you an additional pivot point within your account base, to help ultimately. As far as like a use case that I love to demonstrate that, like, so we talk about the 10 reasons why do you do it, right? It's sticky revenue. There's a need for it. We worked with a financial institution. Our initial engagement with them was a simple database check. They were having some SQL replication and SQL job issues, and we got engaged to help them review that database and see if there were ways to improve what they were dealing with from a replication and from an actual. They were running what's called a query on that database, and it was kind of taking a long time. So we got involved. And it ended up, we did a good job for them, kind of giving them feedback on what they were dealing with. And they had been dealing with a long time loan generation issue at their end user sites. They were in the car finance business, and they were seeing a long lag time when a potential loan candidate was going from a 3 to 5 to 7 or 7 to 5 to 3 or whatever, when they're changing their loan terms. Their applications were not set up in an efficient manner. They had some legacy applications that were on-prem. They were leveraging some hybrid tools in the cloud, LexisNexis, those types of things. And they didn't have a seamless integration that allowed their people to, provide multiple options for their clients when evaluating how to best finance a vehicle. My great uncle owned a car lot back in the day, and one thing he said is once they're on the lot, you want to keep that person on the lot, and every salesperson knows that. And when you're selling cars, so this was a big deal for them. So we did a good job on the application review for them at the database level. And then we started going through our Sprint Zero process with them to help improve other aspects of their application. And it's led to a little over $3 million in project revenue. And one thing that I wanted to bring up to the partner community and the trust advisor, the revenue numbers are great. Those are fantastic, and we can help with big projects and small projects, and we love to get engaged when people are looking for help. But what's powerful is relationships are king, right? Relationships are fantastic. We all know people, and we all work with people, and we all leverage those relationships to help meet new customers. What was important about this example from a development standpoint is this has gone through 3 different technology leaders, right? The leader we got introduced to was on his way out and retiring. The second leader that was there was hired away by another competitor. And now we're on the third leader, but the project for us is actually growing, not contracting. So oftentimes you hear, I've been in the channel for 15 years. Yeah, I got a person over there. Yeah, I got a great relationship there. Yeah, but this person retired. I used to work with XYZ, Fortune 100 company, but my contact retired or moved or got hired away. So I got to go follow them to that next zone to kind of do the relationship thing again and see if maybe I can get on their procurement list and maybe do business with the new company that my relationship's at. That doesn't happen in application development. You're in. It's not a renegotiation. It's not a renewal. It's not a Hey, I got to go, beat off the next person who wants to come in and sell the gig transport or sell the SASE solution, or, I got to go fight off the person who, went to an overview about, about replication technology. And now I used to sell storage to this organization. Now I got to fight off these 4 other storage vendors. That's not the situation you're in when you're dealing with application development, right? So you're very, very sticky. You're part of the business. As long as, you're providing value, which, you're helping them update, manage, and maintain core business applications. Huge upside, huge opportunity. If you're doing it well, you're doing it right, you're communicating, you're part of that business. So it's very hard to, extract you if a competitive situation arises. So from a takeaway standpoint, one of the first things we talked about was the massive size of the opportunity in the application space. Most of us on this call, most of us in this environment, most of us who have been doing this for a long time have lived, breathed, and executed in the data center and the network space. Just enterprise software alone, not talking about development, not talking about the integration, not talking about that. Just the spend on enterprise software is 3 times the market size of where we've been spending the majority of our lives as resellers, consultants, and operators in the VAR and the network space. Okay. The application space is massive, all right? Oracle's got some big boats, okay? They got big boats for a reason. So just know that. Huge opportunity. You don't have to be an expert in it. People have built out practices. We've made our application development team available to our channel partners. Huge opportunity. Oh, by the way, this financial example, this was a what you guys call a trusted advisor technology agent out there in the marketplace. The initial engagement was a $3,500 database assessment, and like I said, it's translated over to $3+ million in revenue for that trusted advisor partner. So significant upside opportunities in the app dev space, and it goes through multiple leaders and relationships at the account. Every single one of your clients, every single one of them is spending money on applications and spending money on developing them. Whether they're doing it in-house or they're working with third parties, ask the question. Don't be afraid to ask the question, how are you maintaining? How are you managing? How are you developing your applications to address your clients' requirements? Have you looked at that? Have you gone through a rationalization project to evaluate what applications you are spending money on and where those might overlap? This is a reality conversation. It's a fun conversation. It's not invasive or intrusive or uncomfortable. Sometimes you got to be careful around the security conversations because you don't want to, point out, the obvious. But in the application rationalization project, this is something, hey, you can help them save money. Like I said, I was on a panel at the CV Expo 2 weeks ago, and we're seeing, from the experts in this space, from an application rationalization perspective, you're seeing anywhere from 30 to 45% savings on a monthly reoccurring basis on people's software spending after they go through an exercise like this. Significant dollars can be saved just by doing a rationalization project. And then the next transition from a rationalization project is, how are you getting the most out of what you are investing in? Do you need to develop anything? You need to do some application plugins, any API integration, things like that. So, and then the other key takeaway that I want everyone to know, and we beat this a few times, but it's okay to start small. Start small with a database assessment. Start small with, hey, let's do a quick code review of your APIs and where you're sharing your data, right? How are you doing that today? Would you like some help? Would you like to take a look at that? Those initial small seeds can really significantly grow. And then be curious, like we always talked about. Be curious about what they're working on today. How are they doing it? And do they, are they looking for any help there? There's not a ton of easily accessible teams for folks to engage with and have a candid conversation. Everyone's kind of trying to sell their type of application or their solution. But you as trusted advisors and as consultants have a unique opportunity to understand what they're really dealing with and then bring in the appropriate building blocks. You have a team here within the Quest world that can come execute. I don't care if it's a ServiceNow integration, migrating from Atlassian to Jira, Microsoft. There's tons of good opportunities out there, tons of amazing building blocks. I promise not to do the Russian cosmonaut impersonation that I always do on these application calls around, Russian components, American components. They're all made in a certain location. But there really is a great building block opportunity in the application space. So I think we got a little bit of time for some questions. If anyone's got any questions, happy to go through them, Bruce. But really excited about application development, and hope everyone enjoyed the session today.
Okay, Adam, why don't you move to the next slide so everyone can see how they can reach you once we go off the air. And
yeah,
sure. There's phone number and the email addresses. That's great. That's great. All right, so let's take some questions. First of all, can you just kind of talk a little bit about how you would convey the value of application development and system integration to potential clients?
How we convey the benefit of it?
Yeah, the entire value.
Well, really, so the application stack is what services most people's most of their client base, right? So I don't care if you're a construction company and you're dispatching trucks and people to different job sites, or if you're like the gentleman who came out to my house the other day to help fix my my garage door, or you're managing significant patient care initiatives within a hospital. Every single one of those is managed, built, and operated on an application. And an application could be something as simple as, we all joke about this, just hey, Microsoft Excel, or QuickBooks, right? Those are significant applications. I think more small businesses in the United States are built off of Excel spreadsheets than most people like to admit. But that's data, that's critical information, and how are you getting the most out of that spreadsheet application? How are you getting the most out of the data that's in that? How are you delivering value to your end customers? Or is that a priority? I mean, you don't have to, but it's a good way to take a look at what you have. That's your value as a company. What information do you have, and how can you better serve your customers? Most everyone's doing that with applications today, right? The example we gave earlier was, we started out with a database query that was taking too long. The database was just a building block of a larger problem. The larger problem was they had people leaving the car lots, right? So if you can have the business outcome conversation, what are you trying to do? Hey, I want people to finance these cars, and I want them to use our loan packaging to do it. And in order for me to do that, I have to deliver that loan capability and quote faster to my car dealerships. Can you help me do that? Having that conversation and building out the Agile process to do that helps address that business need. It's not, hey, you should buy this database because it's faster, or hey, you should buy this firewall because it's better than this firewall. No. It's, you want to keep people on the lots to sell cars. How can we help you do that with an application? So you get to change it's really exciting. You get to change the conversation if your customer is willing to have that business conversation with you.
That's great. So can you share with us some common objections from clients and how you can counter them effectively?
Yeah, common objectives is and it's very similar to like a database or a DR, a security conversation. In one of the biggest objections is, oh, I don't oversee that, right? So if you're used to talking to the network or the data center or the facilities person, they might not have oversight into applications, right? So an easy pivot from there is ask them who is responsible for their applications and managing their business systems and things like that. Who is on their development team? Who oversees that? Could you provide an introduction? I'm assuming you've done a good job for them in the services you've done for them so far. So pivoting to who is responsible would be great. Your one common objection is they already have developers in-house, or they already work with a third party. That's great. Don't necessarily want to displace the in-house development team or displace the third party, but asking around areas that those teams might not be addressing, right? Do they need help? If someone has an Agile methodology, for example, like, they kind of wave their hand and like, yeah, no, we run Agile. That's our whole team. We really believe in it. And they got that squared away. That's fantastic. You can pivot to hey, do you need any third-party assistance, auditing your code before you ship? Same as like a security conversation. Do you have a third-party organization audit that API you just developed, or that you just incorporate into your system? Do you have a code review team that does that for you? A lot of our clients will initially use us just to plug into that facet of their development lifecycle. So there's a lot of areas there. No one has an ironclad team. I would be curious around how they're doing it now, and if there's anything that they could or would like to see done better. If you do have the ability to chat with that person who's responsible for that team, they'll typically share some of their challenges with you.
Okay. Now, Adam, you have mentioned security on a couple of occasions during the presentation, and I'm wondering, we have someone wanting to know if you can expand on the security risks that are involved.
Expand on the security risks within the API?
Yes.
Well, there's a lot of things that they could do there. You basically want to look for malicious software, malicious code that's going to. The simplest way to think about it is you're establishing a contract between your application or your database and another third party provider. If you're not careful, sometimes people will automate, go to GitHub and pull down information or pull down code and just kind of plug it in. There's a lot of people who have kind of masked some potential vulnerabilities in there that can either scrape or run man in the middle, or there's a lot of different kind of gotchas that people can. Everyone's looking for access into the data. If you don't audit that, they put malicious code in that contract. So you have a digital contract saying if I log into your environment. There was a great one that everyone kind of fell for. If you remember the aging app, it was kind of a cool thing that people did on social media. It's like, hey, look how I'm going to look when I'm 85. There was some malicious code in that application that basically gave all of your user data to the hosting provider that came out of, I believe it was out of our friends over in China. So, if you check it out, it's so like TikTok, for example. Might want to check the user, might want to check the agreements you signed when you load that application onto your phone. There are all sorts of applications that a lot of people just kind of sign on the dotted line and accept. They have APIs that are pulling data from your phone, from you as a person, from your company. So a lot of people just kind of accept that when they're installing those APIs. So if I want to get access to this cloud instance, you can develop your own interface to extract that, or you can take the one that's off the shelf. Oftentimes, if you're going kind of the route of taking it off the shelf, there are going to be some strings attached to that API. So you just gotta, like everything in life, you gotta assess, like, okay, this is really, really convenient. Not to be cynical, but what's the catch? If you're not paying for a product in technology, you're the product. So just be aware of that. That's what most people will have to deal with when they use these different APIs.
Okay, so I'm going to put this in my sales toolkit. Are there specific things I need so that I can start selling these services?
A phone. You need a phone.
Phone.
No, sorry. That's little. But really, everyone's having trouble with this. This is a huge opportunity, and there's a big challenge out there in the middle market and the enterprise. People need help with this. Like I mentioned, Microsoft has a ton of capital, a ton of investment. There's a lack of silicon right now just to host and manage and support what they're doing. So at the conference, they were talking about how they've identified 9 companies. This is Microsoft. They've identified 9 companies that they're working with closely to help classify their data. And then they're going to take that out to the rest of the community and basically say, hey, here's what we saw. Here's how you can classify your data. That's all of your clients on here, I know everyone on here, someone you work with is leveraging Microsoft 365 and is probably going to be getting hit up about Copilot. Right now, they're not even selling it below $9,000 a month to anybody. That's like the minimum because they don't have enough compute in Azure to actually deal with the demand that's about to come, but also classifying all that data. There's a huge opportunity for organizations to leverage people who can help classify data and can help them get the most out of it. Large language models are only as powerful as the data that they're leveraging. The data is the dependency that's really, really important. And you're going to see that across platforms. I don't care if it's Google, I don't care if it's Microsoft, if it's Amazon. The data of the user is critical. The data of the corporation is critical. And what you can do when you're talking to people is, hey, do you need any help getting the most out of your platforms? AI is a great buzzword and everyone likes to talk about it. It's been around forever. It's been around for a really long time. Large language model is just a new iteration of the same story that we've been dealing with for a long time. It's very, very cool, but I would avoid going down that path. Like, hey, let me help you with your AI. Don't do that. I would say, hey, do you need some help with managing your data, securing your data, classifying your data, or getting the most out of the systems you've already invested in? A lot of these companies are spending a lot on applications, on software, and they're just scratching the surface of what they can actually, capability-wise, right? What they can actually leverage from those platforms. Huge, huge opportunity to get the most out of what they've already invested in and develop what they have. A lot of companies can get a lot more out of their existing systems, but they just gotta, build the interfaces, build the backbone to do it.
All right. Let's take maybe one more question, and we have a comment. Somebody wants you to answer this one with your cosmonaut impression, if you will. But we have a question. Someone wants to know, how do I position myself as an indispensable advisor rather than just a salesperson?
An indispensable advisor as opposed to just a salesperson. I think understanding a little bit about what the outcome is that they're looking for. Table, and this is getting a little metaphysical here, but table your expectation around what you want to sell and try to understand what they're actually looking for help with. And then have the ability to know that you have partners in the channel that can help you execute regardless of what that outcome they're asking for is. So people are going to clients will tell you what they're looking for help with. They'll tell you if you're barking up the wrong tree trying to position a certain service. I wouldn't waste much time, with your thinking. They're going to tell you what they need help with. That's our strategy. If you want to go back to our first boot camp series, we talked a little bit about quest strategy. And we've always been successful trying to understand what pain point does the client have rather than my agenda, what's important to them. What are they actually trying to achieve? And with application development, I think more than any other service, you know, that's you really get to that business outcome conversation and understand what they're trying to do. And it's very, very hard, and I'm not saying it's easy, to not want to try to sell them something that you know is in your kit bag before they finish that statement, right? You just kind of got to sit on your hands and just listen to what they're trying to achieve ultimately, and then how are they trying to achieve it? What are they trying to achieve, and how have they done it in the past, and how are they trying to achieve it? That's really critical, because sometimes you'll hear, like, for example, hey, I have, you know, we're thinking about SD-WAN, and before they say anything else, the person, I've been on phone calls with partners before, they spout off with 5 different solutions around SD-WAN before they actually hear, okay, they're thinking about SD-WAN, but here's why it didn't work for us last time. And then there's 20 other pieces of that nugget that people will kind of jump in front of. So I guess the quick way to answer your question, Bruce, as far as how to be a indispensable advisor is, I'd say listen a lot more, and try not to speak as much. Of course, I should probably take my own advice.
That sounds like great advice for everyone, I would think. If there are any other questions, we'll make sure that Adam gets them, and he will answer them off the webinar, just emailing you. So that's going to kind of do it for this one. I want to thank Adam Burke again. He's the Quest Technology Management Vice President of Sales and Partnerships. And now, from all of us at Channel Vision Magazine, and for Adam Burke and our friends at Quest Technology Management, thank you for attending. Have a safe and prosperous day.